In his ministry, Jesus never needed people. As a matter of fact, when we look at the manner in which his disciples responded, it surely would have been much better if Jesus had worked alone. However, Jesus wanted to draw people to himself. He wanted people to help him in his ministry. He wanted people to take that ministry forward. Jesus never called only intellectual people. He never called only one kind of person. He invited everyone and anyone who was open to follow him. In the gospel text of today, we will read about two things which happened in the ministry of Jesus. And the first is the call of a tax collector. The tax collector at the time of Jesus was a despised person. The tax collector was also, like others, a Jew and had been appointed by the Romans to collect toll on goods which were passing from one place to another, from one city to another. And so, because many people were ignorant and unlettered at that time, the toll collectors who knew how to read and write would often overcharge people, would often be belligerent with them, would often be obnoxious, would often regard themselves as superior to others because they had a lot of money and were often very rich. This tax collector is called Levi, and Levi is sitting at his tax office. And as Jesus passes by, he issues an invitation to Levi. And Levi leaves the tax office, he leaves the trade, he leaves his belligerence, he leaves his obnoxious attitude, he leaves his cheating and stealing from others, and now becomes a disciple of Jesus. Most others who passed by that way would also see Levi, would also see a tax collector, but most others would see a cheat, would see a thief, would see a robber, would see someone who was to be despised and not trusted, someone who was to be hated. Jesus passed by that same office. But because he looked positively, because he looked enhancingly, because he gave Levi a look of love, because he was able to appeal to what remained within Levi's heart, Levi responded to that positive look, to that positive invitation, and left his old self, left his old ways behind and became a new person. Will I look at others in a positive way today? It is easy to be prejudiced and stereotyped against individuals and even against groups. But to open my mind, to open my heart, to take in the newness which each individual brings requires grace from God. So today I ask for that grace where I look at people not in a negative but in a positive way. Where I look at people not in a judgmental but in an enhancing way. The second part of the gospel text is where Jesus shows that his calling of Levi was not a one-off incident, because he sits at table with people like Levi who were tax collectors and so regarded as sinners. At the time of Jesus, table fellowship, sitting at table, was the most intimate of communions between two males. The fact that a person could sit at table with me meant that we were close friends, meant that we were brothers, meant that we were family, because we would break the same bread and share that bread. When Jesus sits at table with these tax collectors and sinners, those who considered themselves to be righteous, but actually were self-righteous, those who consider themselves to be superior, but actually were not, those who consider themselves to be sinless, but were really, in fact, not, begin to complain, begin to murmur, because their point was, how could a holy rabbi, how could a man who claimed to have come from God sit with the scum of society, sit with those whom society considered as sinners? And in his response, Jesus makes a radical statement when he summarizes the reason why he has come, when at the end of the gospel text of today, Jesus says, I have come not to call the righteous, but sinners. Very clearly, Jesus lived out the function of his name. Jesus lived out the mandate given to him by his Father. Jesus lived out this communication of unconditional, unfathomable, magnanimous love. Will you look at every person you encounter only positively today? Will you avoid judging anyone in a negative manner? Will you look like Jesus did? Will you look at an egg and see not merely a chicken, but an eagle that can soar into the sky?